going on, Jerome? So a lot of Vikings fans have questioned what's been going on with the contract of general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, because when he and Kevin O'Connell came in together in 2022, had matching deals, but Kevin O'Connell got his long-term extension very early in the offseason after the team came off a 14-win campaign, but Kwesi just still hanging in the wind. But besides Rodgers, Kwesi's contract status was the number one talking point from the local media jackals at Kwesi's presser this week. Now, Kwesi just sort of shrugged it off, and these things take time, and talked about how his agent Jimmy Sexton, who is a friggin' gangster. Jimmy Sexton is one of the best agents in sports, but something will eventually get done. And Kwesi's always talking about process, even though it was really gross and stupid. Some of the media ask is well, how can you do your job when you only have 1 year left on your deal? Just questioning integrity. So stupid. But obviously something will get done. But I feel like people are looking at the situation backwards and talking about, ownership has all the leverage in terms of, they want to see how Kwesi does this offseason, and just want to make sure that everything is good to go. Everything is copacetic because, hey, remember the 2022 draft class? Nonsense. And initially I thought that way too, but if you think about it, Kwesi is the one with all the leverage here, because the last two off seasons, Kwesi has kicked ass, right? And yeah, I mean, the Wolves and Vikings ownership, they took a chance on Kwesi because he was not your atypical general manager hire in 2022. And teams are just now really leaning into the analytics-driven approach, but most GMs just former players, former scouts, spent time on the road, national scout, regional scout, director of college scouting. There's a process where you work your way up. Kwesi, from Wall Street, from the R&D department from San Francisco, assistant to the regional GM with the Browns, he took a different path. And it wasn't talked about enough that this was a legitimate experiment, because if Kwesi crashed and burned, that may be it for analytically driven general managers around the National Football League. But now, he's showed up and shown out. It did get off to a great start with 2022. Of course, we know that. But Kwesi, last offseason, moved on from Kurt, moved on from Danielle Hunter. Now, you would think that, hey, that's a big gamble. You're moving on from a guy who was your starting quarterback and moving on from someone who was your franchise edge rusher, right? And it's tough to do. But the Vikings took their medicine. Void year cap hits came home to roost, $62 million dead on the cap. But Kwesi still had a prodigious free agent class with free agents. Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, as well as Sam Darnold all made the Pro Bowl. AVG and Grenard started. And then you had guys like Cashman, Aaron Jones. Gilly was good for 2 seconds too. All that was huge. All that mattered. Plus, extensions with two of your cornerstone players, Justin Jefferson and Christian Darrisaw, with no issue. They were the highest paid players at their respective positions. Jefferson was the highest paid quarterback, non-quarterback at the time, and everything was no muss, no fuss. And that takes skill. That takes a lot of finesse, right? And also, you drafted your future franchise quarterback. You also drafted Diamond Dallas Turner, who's going to be your new talisman on the edge, as well as a 14-win season with Sam Darnold. That's impressive. And frankly, Kwesi should have been Executive of the Year last season, right? And also, think about it too, this offseason, where the Vikings have been just hammering positions of need in free agency and trades, where you doubled down on offensive line. You brought in Fries and Ryan Kelly. You kicked Bradbury and Ed Ingram to the curb. That's monstrous. That is huge for suturing up a position of need of the interior offensive line. Pass rushing D linemen with Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. Doubling up on corner, bringing back Murph with no muss, no fuss. Bringing in Isaiah Rodgers, taking a gamble on Jeff Okudah. Running backs, re-signing Aaron Jones, as well as trading... basically trading Ed Ingram for Jordan Mason. Monstrous, right? Also, it sets you up to go true BPA in this draft class, even though you don't have a ton of picks. And also, navigating the Aaron Rodgers waters where, hey, J.J. McCarthy ideally is going to be the guy, and you've set him up for success, and he's going to be good to go. And you look at all of this, it's the perfect setup, where you have your starting quarterback on his rookie deal, you're able to build the Avengers around him, and every single position that you had questions coming in, interior offensive line, pass rushing, D-line, corner, running back, you got better. You got better. And also, Kwesi set the Vikings up for an additional third and fourth compensatory pick in 2026. That is a masterclass of free agency for 2 years in a row. And now, think about it. Kwesi's deal expires after this season. He would be a free agent if he doesn't sign a new contract. Like, there's no franchise tag with general managers. How many teams, especially if and when the Vikings have great success this year, and say J.J. McCarthy looks like a franchise guy, how many teams will be lining up around the block to get Kwesi as a free agent general manager? Probably most of the league. I would probably say at least 24, 25, 26 of the 32 teams will be all in on Kwesi. Even if they have like a decent general manager, like, don't let good be the enemy of great. Because honestly, if all these plans come together and the Vikings say win the division, make some noise, maybe even win a Super Bowl, J.J. McCarthy, it looks like that dude. How impressive is these last 2 off seasons of managing this roster, having the sea change, and eventually through a quote-unquote competitive rebuild, righting the ship and moving on from the Spielman era and just completely getting after things. So Kwesi holds the cards here. It's not the Vikings, right? And beyond the whole thing about more money, I mean, that is part of it, sure. But also, it's not about control, because by all accounts, Kwesi does have full control. And with Kevin O'Connell's new contract, it wasn't reported that he would have any personnel decisions. So there is still a separation of church and state between Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell. So it's not really that. Even though Kwesi has been very good about collaborations. Like, yeah, he's got the final say, which means that he is going to get the blame, or, well, he doesn't even get the credit, but he just gets the blame if a player doesn't go correctly. But he does collaborate with Kevin O'Connell, especially on quarterbacks. Like J.J. McCarthy was a unilateral decision, as well as defensive players, working with Flores, working with the coaches. Like, he's very good at that. But beyond just more money for himself, more years, more guarantees, which is also important. But I think a lot of it is staff, because the R&D department, research department, his quants, his quantitatives, all that's important, but you can have more. And I think it's great, because I think the Wilfs are they're not afraid to spend money, and they're very forward thinking about this. I mean, hell, they hired Kwesi. That's that's super forward thinking. And now, if the sticking point is, hey, we want a larger staff, we want to be able to really dive into pro personnel, draft, etc., and also internal roster evaluation from a analytics perspective, do it, and take care of Kwesi just like you took care of Kevin McConnell, because what this team is doing right now, special. And you either have to be stupid or a liar to say anything otherwise. This team is setting itself up for some many years of glorious success, especially if and when J.J. McCarthy is that dude. And Kwesi's a major, major part of this, right? So it's not just, please, sir, may I have some more, in terms of Kwesi looking for a new deal. No, Kwesi's got leverage, and I think he may take this to the mat. I mean, ideally after the draft, hopefully things will get done, because freeing up bandwidth, and then everything gets done with Jimmy Sexton and the Vikings and whatnot. But Kwesi deserves to be one of the highest paid GMs in the league. Kwesi deserves to have more funding for research and quant and all that stuff, and I think the Vikings will get there. But yeah, things aren't what they seem with all of this. But super interesting, and I love it. Anyways, that's it. Raw, real rant. Why hasn't Kwesi gotten his extension yet? It's not for the reasons that you think. Let us know your thoughts, our thoughts, comment section. You guys are the best. You know what to do. Skol, production value.